Before you move to South Florida in 2025, you're gonna wanna watch this video. I'm gonna cover 10 things that either myself or our clients have come to realize only after making the move. From hitting costs to choosing the right area, I'll walk you through everything you need to know to make the best decision. And if you stick around, there may even be a few things on this list that might surprise you. Ten things to know before moving to South Florida. Now, like I mentioned, this list comes from topics from our clients that have made the move or things that I've personally realized after making the move almost 6 years ago. And as always, if you're thinking of making a move to South Florida, we want to hear from you and help you in any way that we can. So with that, let's get right into it. And the first thing that you need to know is that it still gets cold down here. And it's been unseasonably cold for a while now. And I use the term cold loosely as I watch a majority of the country suffering from an Arctic blast right now and even some snowfall in northern Florida. We just decided not to participate with any of this. But don't let that 70 degrees fool you. There's been plenty of days over the last month or so where I wake up in the morning and it's in the mid 40s and barely reaching a high of 55, with today being one of them. I don't know if you can hear it in my voice, but it's pretty cold out here right now. As we speak, it's only about 50 degrees, maybe mid 50s. When I woke up this morning, the real field temperature was 43. And some of you may be watching from other states like, oh, come on, give me a break. But the truth is that the longer that you live down here, the harder it is to deal with this type of cold. But here's the thing, this only happens for a short period out of the year. The rest of the year or the rest of the winters are mild, like you saw on that map, in the 70s, sometimes the low 80s. And this is truly what we live down here for. You can get heat anywhere. It's the mild winters that we love, and if it drops down to the 50s or the 40s a couple times, so be it. And speaking of heat, the second thing that you should know is that the heat is bearable, but the humidity is real. That's the silent killer, and a lot of people underestimate it. This also means that AC is not optional here, it's mandatory. So if you're the type of person who loves heat but hates humidity, South Florida is probably not the place for you. I'm also convinced that the humidity plays a factor when it's cold. Now, I'm no meteorologist or anything, but I've noticed that when I go to visit my family in Denver, where it's extremely dry, no humidity whatsoever, that when the temperature reaches the low 40s, even the high 30s, I can go outside in a long sleeve t-shirt and be completely fine. But out here, it drops to 55 and we all lose our minds. But the real killer is the summertime when the temperatures are already high. I'm talking 80% humidity. The air just feels different. Now, I personally like the humidity. I think it feels good on my skin, but there are definitely times when it feels unbearable. But it's really only about 4 months out of the year that we deal with that, which also happens to be hurricane season. So that really just means that we get a lot of rain and a lot of tropical storms, which just makes the humidity worse in general. But look at the bright side. Humidity means no dry skin and no random nosebleeds. I'm talking to everybody in the Southwest and Colorado. And speaking of beautiful weather, you will become more active outdoors. I mean, I'm at this park right now, and like I said, it's pretty cold out here, but there's still people outside getting it done, working out, walking, running. You're just gonna adopt more of an outdoor lifestyle. But it really is because of the beautiful weather and the fact that you have access to it all year long. Especially when you first move out here, you're probably gonna wanna do everything outside. And that's how I was when I first moved out here. And I've told this story before about how I literally wanted to do everything outside. So I would take my computer outside and work and sit in the blazing hot sun. And then I realized that after a couple times of my computer overheating, that probably wasn't a good idea. But even just the simple things like going to the beach, going for walks, biking, outdoor yoga, outdoor gyms, you'll most likely just naturally be finding yourself getting outdoors more. And then of course there's things like paddle boarding and kayaking because we have the access to water here. Now this was personally probably one of the biggest blessings for me. Not only does the sun improve your mood, but just being outdoors in general also led me to getting in really good shape. Now, if you've been a follower of this channel for some time, you probably know that I've lost close to 90 pounds in the last 12 years, and a majority of it came off and stayed off once I moved down here. Now, obviously, a lot of that was just due to eating right and working out and figuring out what actually worked for me. But I found myself outside a lot more often, just walking every day. And I contribute a lot of that to that right there. Something else that I learned after moving here is that South Florida is huge, and there's so much more to it than just Miami. It covers an area of over 1,200 square miles. That's livable area. There's over 6 million people here, putting it in the top 10 largest metro areas in the entire country. And a lot of people, when they first decide they want to move down here, they just think Miami because that's what they know South Florida as. But once you spend some time down here and actually start exploring the metro areas, you'll realize that you can live in Miami without living in the city of Miami, or you can live in Fort Lauderdale without living in the city of Fort Lauderdale, if that makes any sense. You might love the idea of living in Miami, but the city life just doesn't quite fit your lifestyle, which brings us to our next point, which is the area that you choose to live can have a major impact on your day-to-day life. And now this might be the most important topic in this entire video. And this is where proper research and planning come into play. But hey, if you're watching this video, that means you're already in the right place. And if you're new here, I have an entire library of videos covering what life is like in South Florida, breaking down different areas and neighborhoods. So make sure to hit that subscribe button. But one thing that gets a lot of people, myself included before I moved here, is from the outside looking in, all of South Florida kind of just looks the same. But once you spend some time here, you'll quickly realize that each county, each town, and even each neighborhood has its own unique vibe that attracts people for very specific reasons. And we have our systems and processes that will help you figure that out. But let's talk about how choosing the right area to live can impact your day-to-day life. And we'll just use your daily commute as an example. Let's say you land a job in Brickell, downtown Miami, but you're not really a city person, and you fall in love with the equestrian lifestyle in Wellington, which is closer to West Palm Beach, but about 70 miles away from Miami. That's a minimum of 3 hours every day round trip, not to mention the wear and tear on your car. You can consider public transportation, take buses to the train, but that could easily double your commute time. Now you're looking at 6 hours round trip on top of your 8-hour workday. If you sleep 8 hours a night, that leaves you with 2 hours left in the day. Now, of course, that's a very extreme example, but it's just to prove a point that this will likely be the most important decision you make on this journey, and you need to figure out what the most important factor to you is about the area you want to settle in before you even think to start looking at homes. Is it living a certain lifestyle, commuting, kids' schools, even just having access to certain things? We had a client whose biggest priority was being in a neighborhood that was close to a Whole Foods. That's what was important to them. Now, in the extreme example that you did land a job in Miami and you fell in love with a town that was 70 miles away because of a certain lifestyle, there will almost always be another option that makes more sense. And that's exactly why we created the ultimate South Florida relocation guide. It breaks down the different areas, lifestyle, shopping, dining, things to do, transportation. And if I could suggest one thing to start off your journey, it would be to download this guide. It's completely free. You can find the link for that in the description. So snowbird season is very real. It's not a myth. It's real. And if you aren't familiar with what it is, it's when the part-time residents all flock down to Florida at the same time to escape the cold, basically. And there's both positive and negatives to this. And a lot of the locals, or the natives, I should say, they don't really like this. And I can understand why. Traffic increases quite a bit. It's definitely noticeable. There's congestion at all hours of the day. Everyday life is just more crowded, whether it's the beach, the grocery store, or restaurants. But there also is a lot of good that comes out of it. This is when the economy really thrives down here with all that extra contribution. And it's also just a good opportunity to find seasonal work to handle all that extra influx of people. And in addition to snowbirds, South Florida is just a vacation hotspot, so there's really tourism and extra people here all year round. And while it does die down a little bit in the summer months, it doesn't really end. And this is just something that comes with living in a destination hotspot. But like I mentioned, this is really when our economy thrives, and there are perks to it, like finding extra work if you need it. And speaking of work, the job market down here is booming, but in certain industries. Some people do find it a little bit harder to find a job down here, or maybe a job that pays as well as where they're coming from. But there's been a ton of growth here in the last 5 years, and the main industries that really drive the economy down here and have been for a long time is hospitality and healthcare. Hospitality will always be a major power player in this economy, being that we're in a vacation hotspot. It's tourist heavy throughout the year and a major international market for not only business, but leisure too. Tech and finance have also seen massive growth. Most of this is taking place in West Palm Beach and Brickell. Let me just say, West Palm Beach, you need to keep an eye on that city. It's not just this sleepy town for retirees anymore. The growth there has been insane and will continue to grow, and I'll actually be releasing an entire video on why Palm Beach is about to boom very soon. Now, something else that you probably already know about Florida is that it's one of the few states with no income tax. But there's a catch. And this is one of the biggest things that draws people to Florida in general, especially for retirees and just high income earners. You get to keep more of your paycheck compared to states with high income taxes like New York or California. Business owners and remote workers aren't taxed on their earnings at the state level, and a lot of retirees flock to Florida because they're not taxed on their Social Security benefits or pension. But just because there's no state income tax does not mean that living in Florida is cheap, because they make up for it in other areas like property taxes. Now, while Florida's average property tax rate is about 0.8%, it's gonna vary depending on the county and even the city that you choose to move to. And it's much higher in South Florida. If you buy in a brand new community, taxes can be higher than an old established neighborhood, due to the lack of infrastructure, covering costs for things like building the roads and the sidewalks and the amenities. But I don't want to get too deep on this topic because I did just make a cost of living video where I did go in depth on this, and I'll link that right up here. Insurance can also be pricey and complex, but despite what you may hear, it's not impossible to get. Unlike other states where you may only need a standard homeowner's insurance policy, down here in Florida, you most likely need multiple policies, like your standard homeowner's insurance, windstorm coverage, which will cover damages from storms, hurricanes, and then maybe flood insurance. And if you live in a high-risk zone, that means higher premiums. So how close you are to the coast, if you're in a flood zone, and if your home is up to code and has storm protection, will all have an impact on how much you pay. And just in general, Florida has seen a rise in insurance premiums, basically just due to an unstable insurance market. Most of the national carriers have left the state, which caused increased premiums, in addition to a lot of fraudulent claims, particularly related to roofing. See, it's cold out here. I can barely even talk. And because of this, Citizens, which is Florida's state-run insurance carrier, basically the last resort, has pretty much taken over. So yes, while it is complex and could be challenging, it's not impossible whatsoever. And despite everything we just talked about, relocating does not have to be stressful. And I get it. It can feel stressful. It can be overwhelming. It's a big move. I did it. But it doesn't have to be as stressful as you might think it does. We talked about proper planning and finding an area first that aligns with your lifestyle. And breaking the process into smaller steps also helps just make it more manageable. And understanding that there's so many tools online nowadays that can help you, like virtual tours, for example. Another huge thing is creating a support network, having family and friends to lean on. Having support makes a huge difference. And that's exactly where we come in. We take this so seriously that our entire team knows what it's like to make a move like this. Yes, we built an entire team around people who have made the move and have been in your shoes. So whether it's guidance on finding the perfect area or the perfect home, getting financing, or getting insurance, we've all been there, and we'd love to be your real estate resource of choice, whether you're buying or selling in South Florida. We want to hear from you. If you get value from these videos, reach out to us, whether you're moving in 10 days or 10 months. We'll help you process everything and set up a plan based on your goals to help make your next move in South Florida your best one. In the meantime, I appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you on the next one.